Can Ferrari really take advantage of the mid-season regulatory change to reverse his fate in 2025? Or are we witnessing another wasted opportunity of Maranello? Stay, because the answer is much more complex than you imagine. The 2025 Formula One season began under a mantle of technical uncertainty that completely altered the development panorama of all teams: the implementation of the new TD018 technical directive. At first glance, it might seem a lower modification, just a change in the flexibility requirements of the front wings. But in reality, it is much more than that. We are talking about a structural turn that affects not only aerodynamic performance, but also the complete design philosophy of modern monoplace. A modification that not only implies redesigning specific parts, but reconfiguring the way in which loads and distribution of forces throughout the vehicle are conceived. The TD018 establishes that the permitted flexibility on the front ailerons decreases from 15 mm to just 10 mm. It may seem a minimum, almost insignificant figure for those who observe from the outside. But in an environment where tenths of the second represent the difference between glory and mediocrity, those 5 mm less are a silent revolution that impacts the efficiency of the air flow, the sensitivity of the direction, the stability in rapid curves, and ultimately, in the capacity of the pilots to maximize their return times. A more rigid front wing means less aerodynamic game. The car will be more predictable, yes, but also more demanding to find the perfect balance between tip and passage speed. Adapting to this new reality not only implies redesigning ailerons. It also affects all the geometry of the chassis, the tuning of the suspension, and the way in which the rake inclination of the car is managed, as well as the behavior of the flow of air towards the rear diffuser. The engineers are not simply adjusting a component, they are rewriting the aerodynamic interaction of their monoplace. The economic impact of this directive is another layer of the challenge. Redesign and wing system, recalibrate suspensions, manufacture new components, and pass all the FIA load tests is an expense of approximately $1 million per equipment. A considerable budget if we remember that Formula One of 2025 remains subject to a very strict expense limit. It is not just money that comes out of the accounts, it is money that necessarily ceases to be invested in the development of the 2026 car, based on the new technical regulation that is coming. Every dollar spent now is a dollar that could make a difference in the next era. In this context, Ferrari's position has been particularly interesting. While teams like Red Bull publicly expressed their discomfort to change, Ferrari opted for a strategic serenity position. Loic Serra, its technical director of chassis, said they had already contemplated the entry into force of the TD018 in their development plans. In other words, for Ferrari, the new regulation was not a problem, but an opportunity to adjust its project from an early approach. However, you have to wonder, is it really an advantage or an act of misunderstood trust? Ferrari's recent history is full of occasions in which an apparent preparation ended up unmasking as a lack of flexibility or rapid response capacity. Public serenity could simply be the mask that hides the real urgency within Maranello. The situation cannot be analyzed in isolation. Ferrari not only faces the technical challenge of TD018, he does it in the midst of the pressure generated by the arrival of Lewis Hamilton, a pilot accustomed to working with highly perfected tools in Mercedes, who now faces a car that, so far, has not shown the consistency or fineness necessary to aspire to championships. In addition, his partner Charles Leclerc continues to push development from his deep knowledge of Ferrari DNA, which could generate internal tensions if the solutions do not arrive as fast as expected. The TD018 directive, therefore, is not simply a regulatory correction. It is a fire test for Ferrari. A test that will examine not only its technical capacity, but also its internal structure, its strategic resilience, and ultimately, its real ambition to return to the top. Ferrari has reached a point where each update, each modification, and each race represents not only an opportunity to gain points, but a silent battle for not repeating the mistakes that championships cost so many times in the modern era. Ferrari presented the SF25 with an ambitious promise: to build a completely new car that only uses the previous model as a conceptual basis. The great structural change was the adoption of a pull-rod front suspension, breaking with years of pushrod tradition within the Scuderia. This design, used by teams such as Red Bull in previous years, offers significant advantages in airflow management to the rear of the car and improves aerodynamic packaging in the front area. From Maranello, it was highlighted that this change sought to clean the airflow and increase the range of possibilities for aerodynamic development throughout the season. However, the track practice revealed that this conceptual revolution has not translated into the performance that Ferrari expected. Despite the theoretical advances, the SF25 has a high sensitivity to the changes of height with respect to the ground. This generates chronic equilibrium problems, particularly evident when the car is going through low-speed curves. In these situations, the car suffers a subviring phenomenon when entering curve and accused over the out-of-exit, causing the pilots to constantly correct their trace. This dynamic erodes both the confidence of the pilots and the consistency of the career rhythm, two fundamental aspects for any candidate for the championship. Another serious problem detected in the SF25 is the premature wear of its flat background. Due to the rear axle instability, the car tends to sink more than expected in certain phases of acceleration and braking. This additional flexion generates an excessive friction of the flat background against the track, compromising both aerodynamic efficiency and the durability of the race components. A situation that not only affects the rhythm of a return, but brutally punishes performance in stint long, when the car needs to preserve tires and maximize aerodynamic load in a sustained way. The competitive reality of the SF25 was even more exposed during the classification sessions of the first major awards of the season. Under a single round launched, where maximum stability and precision are needed in each phase of the curve, the Ferrari showed worrying limitations. The car became extremely sensitive to any change in asphalt or temperature, which caused both Hamilton and Leclerc to face difficulties to put the tires in proper temperature and extract the maximum grip available in critical moments. The immediate consequence of these problems was that, despite having a good speed in long batches, the SF25 was relegated to less competitive positions on the output grid, forcing their pilots to complex and risky Sundays. Unlike McLaren or even Mercedes, who managed to establish a solid set-up platform from the beginning, Ferrari was still trapped in a dynamic of testing and adjusting in each session, with a level of inconsistency that undermined any medium and long-term career strategy. The technical development of the SF25, then, is in a dangerous paradox. Although the car shows gross potential, the inability to translate those innovations into consistent results puts in check not only the 2025 project, but also the preparation of the Scuderia by 2026, a year that promises to radically change the Formula One. Each failure not corrected in this car indirectly compromises the knowledge base and the technical capital that Ferrari needs to accumulate for the new generation of cars. Ferrari has decided to play all his immediate future with the SF25 updates plan. Far from opting for a gradual evolution, Maranello's team has opted for a high-risk strategy. Introduce a mass improvements around the Spain Grand Prix. This decision implies redesign in an integral way not only the front wing to comply with the new TD018 directive, but also reinforce critical areas such as the rear diffuser, the flat background and the suspension geometries. The magnitude of the work suggests that Ferrari is not simply looking to adapt, but seeks to reinvent his car in full season, in an act desperate for not losing the wake of McLaren, Red Bull and Mercedes. The underlying problem is that, in 2025, each financial or time resource that is intended to evolve a car that has already shown severe limitations is a resource that is lost for the development of the 2026 car. Unlike previous seasons, this year it has a crucial context. The new regulations of engines and chassis by 2026 promises to completely alter the rules of the game. Ferrari, like the rest of the teams, is in a double-direction race, where he needs to remain competitive now, but also build a solid base not to start the new cycle at a disadvantage. Betting everything to the SF25 is an immense risk. If the improvements do not work, not only options to fight for the title in 2025 will be lost, but will also compromise the preparation for the largest change in Formula One modern. Internal pressure is also reaching very high levels. Lewis Hamilton, in his first year with Ferrari, arrived with the hope of finding a project capable of offering his 8th title. But so far, the results have been far from those expectations. Although he has quickly adapted to SF25, his experience allows him to detect the lacks of the car with brutal clarity. Charles Leclerc, on the other hand, continues to press from within, aware that every lost year is a step closer to his window to be closed world champion. This combination of ambition and frustration generates an atmosphere in which each race, each classification, each improvement, acquires excessive importance. The situation in Maranello reminds other critical moments in its recent history, where the lack of clear direction ended up taking the team to years of mediocrity. This time, however, the environment is even more demanding. The rivals are not only competing at the technical level, but also operate with much more efficient and adaptable structures. McLaren, for example, has not stopped evolving his winning concept, while Mercedes works silently in his resurgence. Red Bull, although affected by its internal instability, remains a constant threat. In this context, Ferrari cannot afford another false step. Betting everything to half-season updates makes SF25 a project to all or nothing. If they work, they could revitalize the dream of championship that seemed to escape. If they fail, they will mark a new chapter in the long list of lost opportunities of Maranello. The story is yet to be written, but the margin of error for Ferrari has never been as narrow as now. Ferrari faces a moment of absolute definition in its recent history within Formula One. The implementation of the TD018 technical directive, together with the deep structural weaknesses of the SF25, place Maranello's team in a borderline situation. It is not just one more season. We are facing a period in which the foundations of the immediate future of the Scuderia are being decided. Each technical decision, each update, each adjustment of chassis and aerodynamics will have direct consequences not only in the 2025 season, but in its preparation for the great regulatory change of 2026. Ferrari's challenge is not less. In an environment where rivals such as McLaren, Mercedes, and Red Bull evolve rapidly, there is no room for calculation errors or for ineffective developments. The internal pressure is enormous, fed by the arrival of Lewis Hamilton, who demands an absolute level of excellence, and the persistent hunger of success of Charles Leclerc. Both pilots need a car that is not only competitive in classification, but also in a rhythm of career and strategic management, elements that until now the SF25 has failed to consolidate. The strategic dilemma is evident. Investing heavily in improving the SF25 could allow Ferrari to fight for partial victories and perhaps keep a championship illusion alive. However, each resource for this transition project is a less available resource for the true long-term objective, to master the new era of Formula One that will begin in 2026. The administration of time, money, and human talent will be what determines whether Ferrari finally breaks the drought of titles or if it continues to be trapped in the cycle of frustrations that has characterized it in recent decades.